The scientific name is Rana tigrina. So we will try to understand the different organ and organ system using frog. Firstly, we'll learn about the systematic position of frog. So it belongs to kingdom Animalia. Kingdom Animalia. That is, they are heterotrophic. They cannot produce their own food. They are multicellular. They are eukaryotic. Sorry. They are eukaryotic. They belong to phylum Chordata. That is, we know the features of phylum Chordata. They have notochord. They have pharyngeal gill slits. So these features are present at least once in their lifetime. Now they belong to subphylum Vertebrata. So we know that in vertebrates, we have vertebral column that supports the notochord. Then they belong to the division Gnathostomata. We know that the organisms that belong to this division have jaws. So jaws are present in these. The superclass is Tetrapoda. Tetra means four. Poda is appendages. So they have four appendages. That is, they have four limbs. The two forelimbs. I am talking about in total limbs. So they have two pairs of limbs, or we can say that they have four limbs, two forelimbs and two hind limbs. So two forelimbs and two hind limbs are present. They belong to class Amphibia. Amphibia means they can live in both water and on land. So amphibia, that is, they can live on both water and on land. Now they belong to order Anura, family Renidae, genus is Rena, and species is Tigrina. So it is the common Rena tigrina, common name is Rena tigrina. Rana tigrina, common name is common Indian bullfrog. So it is also known as Indian bullfrog, common Indian bullfrog. The scientific name is Rana tigrina. Rana is genus, tigrina is species. Tigrina represents species. So this is the systematic classification or the systematic position of frog in taxonomy. So phylum is Chordata because of the characteristics like it has notochord or pharyngeal gill slits at least at one point of its lifetime. Subphylum is vertebrate, division is Gnathostomata, superclass is Tetrapoda, class Amphibia, order Anura, family Renidae, genus is Rena, and species Tigrina. So we will, before proceeding into the different anatomy of different organ and organ system, we will first try to understand the different habits and habitat of Rana tigrina using habits and habitats of Rana tigrina, and then we will study about the external morphology or external characteristics of Rana tigrina. So habitat, the place where they live. Usually frogs in general are found in or near water and in very damp places. So they are usually found in damp places. They are usually found in moist environment. So they are usually found in moist environment, moist places, damp environment. The common Indian bullfrog, which is also known as Rana tigrina, it lives in or near the permanent freshwater lakes, ponds and streams. So it usually lives near the water bodies, usually freshwater bodies. So we may say that they may also act as a pollution indicator. How? Suppose at one point of time there are lot of number of frogs which are present near this water body, but due to pollution this water gets polluted. This is polluted water. So number will reduce because usually the bullfrog, common Indian bullfrog, are usually found in or near the freshwater lakes, ponds or streams. So therefore they may act as a pollution indicator. Due to the pollution, their number will decrease. So it is usually in water most of the time. It lives near water mainly for two reasons. Firstly, it helps in keeping the skin moist. So this moist skin also helps in respiration. This we will see when we will understand the respiratory system. So this helps in respiration to carry on cutaneous respiration. Cutaneous respiration means respiration through skin. Respiration through skin. So to carry out cutaneous respiration, it usually lives in the moist environment to keep its skin moist. And in case if there is a chance of any attack by the enemies, it can immediately jump or slip into the water to escape from the enemies. Therefore, frog, for example, Rana tigrina, are usually present in or around the water bodies. So this is their habitat. Now we will talk about the different habits. So firstly is locomotion, that is the movement. Movement from one place to another. So the frog moves in two ways, by leaping on land and by swimming in water. We know that frogs are amphibian. Frogs are amphibian. Therefore, they live on land as well as in water. Therefore, when they are present on land, they perform leaping, and when they are present in water, they move with help of swimming. So in water, they move the locomote with the help of swimming, and when they are present on land, they leap. And therefore, since it has to leap on land and has to swim in water, its muscular system and endoskeletal system have become specialized to do so. So their muscular and endoskeletal system are well specialized to perform both leaping and to perform swimming in water. Next is feeding. So when we were studying about cockroach, we know that cockroach carnivorous, that is, they feed on herbivores or the animals that eat plants. So frogs are carnivorous, that is, they feed on herbivores, and food consists mainly of living insects, worms, mollusks, and tadpoles. So which are usually caught by a sudden flip of its. So this is very important, which I'm going to talk about. The type of tongue. So their tongue is large, protrusible, that is, it can come out. It is sticky. Why? It is adapted in such a way. Firstly, the large tongue will allow to catch the prey from a distance. And in order to catch the prey, the tongue is protrusible and sticky, so that when it comes in contact with the prey, the insects or mollusks or tadpoles or worms, etc., get stick to the tongue. And one very important feature is that the tongue is attached at the front end and it is free behind. So it is attached at the front end and it is free behind, unlike the tongue we humans have, which is not attached at the front end but is attached at the back end. So unlike humans, frogs have tongue which is attached at the front end and it is free at the behind end. So the characteristics of tongue is very important, that it has large, protrusible, sticky tongue which is attached at the front end and free at the behind, and this allows the easy catching of the prey. Any motionless object, the food is not chewed. So we know that in cockroaches, the fooding habit was chewing and biting type, but in this, the food is not chewed, but it is swallowed as a whole. So this is very important. The feeding is frogs are carnivores. So when we talk about you may be asked a question that frog belongs to which category. So we know that when we talk about the food chain, in food chain, where can we place the frog? So we know that in food chain, firstly it is the producers that produce their own food. Then we have primary consumers, which are usually the herbivores. And then we have secondary consumers, then tertiary consumers. So producers are the ones that produce their own food. Primary consumers are mainly the herbivores that feeds on the plant. And secondary consumers are mainly the carnivores that feed on the herbivores. So frog, being a carnivore, it belongs to the category of secondary consumer in the food chain, which can further, like there are many species that can further feed on frog. So there are larger species that can further feed on frog. Therefore, frog belongs to the category of secondary consumer. So this may be asked that frogs belongs to which category in the food chain. So frog belongs to the category of secondary consumers in the food chain. The third important habit of frog is croaking. So croaking is the sound. It is a characteristic noise or sound which is made by the frogs. It is known as croaking. It is like you might have heard during the breeding season, especially during the rains. And it is also known as the mating call. So it is also the mating call for the frog during the breeding season. Frogs can croak underwater as well as on land, so it can happen on both the surfaces, and it is louder in males. This is important that it is louder in males due to the presence of pair of distensible balloon-like loose skin folds on throat, which is called as the vocal sacs. So vocal sac are present on in the males, absent in females. And they act as resonators, therefore producing the larger or louder sound. So croaking is the particular characteristic noise or the sound which is made by the frogs, especially during the breeding season. It is also called as the mating call, where the frogs call the opposite sex by making this sound. And a frog can make this sound on water, underwater, as well as on land. And usually it is louder in males due to the presence of the structure which is called as the vocal sac. Then very important feature is hibernation and estivation. So many people get confused between hibernation and estivation. Hibernation is the cold sleep, that is during the winter season, and estivation is the summer sleep. So it is the winter sleep. It will be easy to remember like this. So it is winter sleep, hibernation is winter sleep, and estivation is summer sleep. Estivation is summer sleep, hibernation is winter sleep. So, usually, what type of animals undergo hibernation and estivation? So, it is usually the poikilothermous animals. So, poikilothermous animals are the ones that cannot regulate their body temperature. So these animals lack the ability to regulate their body temperature, and therefore their body temperature fluctuates with that of the environment. So in humans, for example, like in humans, we know that there is a fixed constant body temperature which is around 37 degrees centigrade. Irrespective of summer or winter season, the body tries to maintain the temperature and it remains constant. But there are certain animals which are known as poikilothermous. So these poikilotherms are the animals that cannot regulate their body temperature, and therefore their body temperature fluctuates with that of the environment. Therefore, in order to escape the extreme heat in the summer season or the extreme cold in the winter during the winter season, these animals undergo the process like hibernation, that is winter sleep, or estivation, which is the summer sleep. So during adverse environmental conditions in cold winter or dry hot summer days, frogs bury in the soft damp bottom mud for protection, where the temperature of environment remains almost favorable. So they bury themselves, they have a burrowing habit. They bury themselves under the soft damp mud for protection from extreme heat and from extreme cold. They become, during the summer sleep or winter sleep, that is during the hibernation or estivation, they become metabolically inactive. So they become metabolically inactive. Only the essential metabolic processes keep on going, and otherwise they become metabolically inactive and they stop feeding, living only on the glycogen and fat which is stored in their bodies. So it is usually the glycogen and the fat which is stored in their bodies, and they live only on that, and they become metabolically inactive for that period of time. Lung respiration is suspended and cutaneous respiration through damp skin alone is sufficient. Since they are metabolically inactive, they do not require much oxygen to break down the food, etc., or to carry out any other body activities. Therefore, lung respiration is suspended during the summer sleep or the winter sleep, and it is only the cutaneous respiration that is sufficient or plays the important role. This state of dormancy or suspended animation is called hibernation or winter sleep during winter, and estivation or summer sleep in summer. So, in case if you forgot, you just remember these two terms of English. Why? That stands for winter and hibernation. Although the spelling of hibernation is HI, but you can remember it winter and hibernation, and summer sleep as estivation as this. So, A means estivation, S stands for summer sleep. So, these two terms you may remember in order if you forgot what is winter sleep and what is summer sleep. With the end of cold winter or hot summer seasons, we see frog usually during the rainy seasons. The frog come out to lead a normal active life once again. So this is about the hibernation and estivation habits of frog. The next is camouflage. Camouflage is very important. In which, so camouflage is the property where the organism can change their skin color to match their surroundings. So this camouflage is important in order to protect themselves from enemies. So in order to protect themselves from enemies, it is really important. So camouflage plays an important role. Frogs cannot be easily identified by their enemies because they can change the color of their skin to match that of their surroundings. This type of protective coloration is known as the camouflage. So this type of protective coloration is known as the camouflage, where the organism can change their skin color that matches their surroundings so that they cannot be distinguished from their surrounding by their enemies. And therefore, their enemies cannot recognize them and they can prevent themselves by the attack. So changes in color are possible by the dispersion or concentration of special amoeboid pigment color cells in the skin. So in the skin of frog, there are special cells, pigment cells, that helps in color change by either concentrating on a particular position, leading to the darkening of that area, or dispersing into the different position, leading to the discoloration or the fainted appearance. The next is breeding. So with the onset of the rainy season, we know that breeding happens during the rainy season. So with the onset of rainy season, frogs emerge out of estivation. Estivation, again, I'm repeating, it's summer sleep, and immediately start breeding, which usually lasts from the July to September, that is the rainy season. Males gather in appropriate shallow waters and start croaking. We know croaking is the sound produced loudly by the males to attract the females. So it is the mating call also, just to attract the females for mating or copulation. So croaking is the sound that male frogs usually make in order to attract the females for mating or copulation. Fertilization is external. So what do we mean by this external fertilization? So we have male frog and we have female frog. The male frog will release the sperm in the water and female frog will release the egg. So this sperm in water and egg in water will fertilize when they come in contact with each other in the water. So these will fertilize in water, not inside the female frog. Therefore, the fertilization is external. So the fertilization is taking place externally to the organism. Therefore, the fertilization is external. So the fertilization is external, and within 2 weeks, fertilized eggs or zygotes develop into free-swimming aquatic larvae. We know the specific name of the larva of frog is tadpole. So these are the larvae of frog called tadpoles, which undergo metamorphosis to become the adult terrestrial frogs. That is series of changes. So within 2 weeks, fertilized eggs or zygotes develop into free swimming aquatic larva, which so the name of the larva is tadpole. Most of you might be knowing it, but it is important, which undergo metamorphosis to become the adult frogs. So in breeding, we learned about the where it usually takes place in the rainy season. Croaking sound is made by the male frogs to attract the females, especially for mating or copulation process. And fertilization is external, where sperms and eggs are released into the external body, water surface, and there the fertilization happens. And within 2 weeks, fertilized eggs or zygotes develop into the free swimming larvae, which are tadpoles, that further undergo metamorphosis to become the adult terrestrial frogs. The next is enemies. So, frog has various enemies. Several natural enemies eat frogs and reduce their number. The chief enemies are snake, turtles, mongooses, raccoons, crows, vultures, aquatic birds, fishes, and other amphibians, and even the man. Frogs also serve as host for different kinds of parasites. So it acts as a host for different kinds of parasites, such as for protozoans like Opilina, Nyctotherius, Ballantidium, Trichomonas, and Amoeba. It acts as a host. That is, it carries these parasites on its body. And for the other examples for which it serves as a host are lung flukes and the nematodes like Rhabdias. Economic importance of frog is highly economically important in certain situations. Like, firstly, we know that it is used for laboratory studies, so it acts as a animal model in order to understand various processes. So it is usually used for the laboratory studies as a vertebrate type. It is also used for researches in physiology, pharmacology, and human pregnancy tests, and as a fish bait. So, for in order to catch the fish, we usually use the frog. It is a good friend of farmers. So, like earthworm, frog also are a good friend of farmers. Why? Because they eat the insects. So, frog feed on the insects. So, therefore, they act as good friend for farmers because they can feed on the insects which are harmful to the crops, thus preventing the manifestation, thus preventing the insects to manifest on the crops. The muscular hind legs of frogs are used as food by men. So, in certain areas of the world, people eat the muscular hind leg of frogs, which is used as a food by man, and they are even reared at farms in some parts of the world for eating purposes. So, therefore, economic frogs carry a high economic importance. They are usually used for the laboratory studies in order to understand the vertebrate system. They are also used for research in physiology, pharmacology, and human pregnancy tests. And they are good farmer friends. Why? Because they feed on the insects. And in certain parts of the world, usually the muscular hind legs of the frogs are eaten by the man. Now we will learn about the morphology of the frog. So, what is morphology? Firstly, we'll understand this term. Morphology is the external features. So, study of external features. These external features are known as the morphology. That is the one which are easily visible when we see any organism. So, the external features which we see is the morphology of that organism. So, if we look at the frog, the complete body of frog is divided into two parts, two major parts. The first is head, the second one is trunk. So the head region and the trunk region. So it is divided mainly into two parts, head region and trunk region, and tail is absent. Tail absent. If I talk about the cockroach, if you remember in cockroach, the body is divided into three parts, head, thorax, and abdomen. In frog, there is no such division. The body is divided into two parts, head and trunk. So the tail is absent, there is no tail. And in head region, a pair of eyes is present. And we have limbs also. So we know that they are tetrapods. That is, they have four limbs. So we have a pair of forelimb and pair of hind limbs. Forelimbs are the ones that are present on the anterior side, closer to the anterior side. We can see these are closer to the head, And hind limb means the limbs that are present on the back side, that is away from the head. Fine. So we have forelimb and hind limb. So this is the general morphology of frog, that the body is divided into head and trunk, tail is absent. Now we will learn about each of these one by one. But before that, we will first learn about the skin of frog. So the body of a frog is somewhat spindle shaped, as we see here. So it is usually spindle shaped. So it is like spindle shaped, which is pointed anteriorly. Pointed anteriorly. So we can see here that it is spindle shaped, that is pointed anteriorly, and rounded posteriorly. So you can see here that it is rounded posteriorly and pointed anteriorly. It is highly flattened dorsoventrally and streamlined to swim through the water. So dorsoventrally it is slightly flattened and streamlined. So this type of body structure helps in swimming. So the streamlined body helps in swimming. It is divisible into distinct head, trunk, and limbs with neither a neck or a tail. So neck or a tail is absent, and the body can be divided into head and trunk with two pairs of limbs. The size of adult Rana tigrina varies from 12 to 18 centimeter in length and 5 to 8 centimeter in width. This is the general morphology. So the size of adult Rana tigrina varies from 12 to 8 centimeter in length and 5 to 8 centimeter in width. The skin of frog is smooth, as we discussed. It is moist, so scales are absent. The skin is smooth, moist. This moist skin allows cutaneous respiration, that is the respiration through skin. Slimy, therefore they are very slippery, fitting loosely on body and characterized by the presence of large flask-shaped mucus glands that secretes the mucus, keeping the skin moist and slimy. The color, this is very important. If we look at the color of the dorsal side of the body is generally olive green with dark irregular spots, while on the ventral side the skin is uniformly pale yellow. So if I talk about the dorsal side, so you can see here that the color is dark. So on the dorsal side, the color is dark olive green with spots. While if I look at the ventral side, the color is usually uniform and it is light pale yellow. Right? So on the dorsal side, the skin color is darker. So the dorsal side, the body is generally olive green with dark irregular spots, while on the ventral side, the skin is uniformly pale yellow. The frog never drinks water, but it absorbs it through the skin. So this is important. The frog never drinks water, but it absorbs it through the skin. Large subcutaneous space called lymph space separates the skin from the body wall, and the skin of the dorsal surface is thicker than the ventral. The vertical section reveals two distinct regions, an outer epidermis and the inner dermis. If I look at this section, then we have an outer epidermis and the inner one dermis, which is attached with the subcutaneous area. This is subcutaneous region. This is dermis. The outer one is epidermis. So skin is divided mainly into two regions, two distinct regions, outer epidermis and inner dermis. So if I talk about the characteristics of epidermis, it is thin outer ectodermal layer of stratified squamous epithelium, which is 6 to 12 cells deep. We know that stratified means making a layer. So this is 6 to 12 cells deep stratified squamous epithelium. One or two outermost layers of cells form stratum corneum. The outer two layers, one or two layers form stratum corneum. And its cells are much flattened. The outer layer cells are much flattened, dead, without nuclei. And their cytoplasm replaced by a horny protein, which is the keratin. Their cytoplasm is replaced by keratin. So the outer layer is keratinized. The inner layer is the dermis. The underlying connective tissue layer called the corium or dermis constitutes a major part of the skin. It contains blood capillaries. Usually the blood supply originates from this region. So it contains blood capillaries, nerves and muscle fibers. So it is usually the live form. It is in this, we know that the outer layer is dead. So of dead cells. Why we are saying it as dead cells? Because the cells are much flattened, dead, without any nuclei, and their cytoplasm is also replaced by the protein, which is the keratin protein. While the dermis, in the dermis, the cells are live. They contain blood capillaries. They have a supply of blood capillaries. They have nerve endings and muscle fibers, vertical connective tissue fibers, pigment cells called melanophores. Melano means pigment, is related to pigment, or chromatophores. And large flask-shaped epidermal glands are embedded in it. So these large flask-shaped epidermal glands are usually the mucus glands. Next is head of the frog. So we know that the body of the frog is divided into two distinct regions, head and trunk, with limbs. So we know that the head of the frog is flat, roughly triangular in outline. So if I focus on the head of the frog, you can see here that it is triangular in shape. So it is triangular. If I focus, it is triangular in shape, and it is the anterior end is forming a snout. So it is flat, roughly triangular. So it is flat, roughly triangular in outline, with a short, blunt anterior snout terminating in a wide transverse mouth. So this snout, which is present anteriorly, it terminates into the wide mouth. You can see here that in the head, two small openings, the external layers, which are also known as the external nostrils, are present for the breathing. They have a pair of external layers, or the external nostrils. You can see here, these are the external layers. They have a pair of eye. So these external layers lie dorsally above the mouth at the tip of the snout and serve in the respiration. So at the tip of the snout or dorsally above the mouth, these external layers or the external nostrils are present that helps in the respiration. Two very large spherical and protruding eyes are situated dorsolaterally. So this is the dorsolateral side, on the lateral sides of the head. They are present on the top of the head. They are large spherical and protruding eyes. Behind and below each eye is a conspicuous, flat and deeply pigmented circular patch of skin. So you can see here that there is a pigmented patch of skin, which is the tympanum, which is known as the tympanum or the eardrum. This tympanum, also known as the eardrum, it plays important role in hearing by receiving the sound waves. So it receives the sound waves, therefore plays an important role in hearing. So tympanum, basically ears as such, external ear is not present, but they have tympanum, which is the eardrum, which is the membrane-like structure that receives the sound waves and therefore help in hearing. So they have large protruding eyes on the head, and the head is triangular, somewhat triangular, roughly triangular in shape, with a snout terminating in a wider transverse mouth. They have two external openings, external nares or external nostrils, that helps in the respiration. Now, if I talk about the eye, so each eye has a thick pigmented layer. So each eye has a thick, pigmented and almost immovable upper eyelid. So the eyelid is immovable and a thin semi-transparent and freely movable lower eyelid. So the upper eyelid is immovable, almost immovable, while the lower eyelid is movable. And from the lower eyelid arises a transparent third eyelid. This is very important. In frogs, there is a transparent third eyelid, which is also known as nictitating membrane. This nictitating membrane originates from the lower eyelid and is known as the third eyelid, which covers and protects the eye during swimming and keeps it moist in air. So it protects the eye during the swimming and keeps it moist in air. So it prevents the entry of water directly into the eye. So this nictitating membrane covers and protects the eye during the swimming and keeps it moist in air. This is very important. Why I am saying it is important? Because nictitating membrane is a vestigial organ in humans. So it is a vestigial organ in humans, which is present in humans, but it is of no use, and therefore it is a very reduced structure in humans. So that is vestigial organ. So while in frogs, it plays an important role. So the third eyelid, which is the nictitating membrane, covers and protects the eye during the swimming. A median light colored patch of brow spot is just in front of eyes, represents the vestigial pineal eye. So in frogs also a vestigial eye, which is the vestigial pineal eye, is present. External ear, as I mentioned, is lacking. They have tympanum, that is the eardrums that receives the sound waves. But as such, external ear is lacking. In male frog, the throat bears two bluish patches of skin. As I already mentioned, they have vocal sacs, which act as resonators to intensify the sound of croaking during the breeding season. So these vocal sacs act as resonators. Thus intensifying the sound of croaking during the breeding season. So it is present only in males. So this is the morphology of head, where the head is snout and triangular in shape, which opens into a wider mouth. Then on the dorsal side of the head, we have external nares, a pair of external nares, which is the external nostrils that help in the respiration. And if I talk about the eardrums, they have two large protruding eyes that have three eyelids: upper eyelid, middle eyelid, and the lower eyelid, third eyelid. The upper eyelid is immovable, while the middle eyelid is movable, and the third eyelid is the nictitating membrane that helps in prevention of water eyes during the swimming. Then they have eardrums, which is the patch-colored structures, which are known as tympanum or the eardrum that helps in the hearing. Now we'll talk about the trunk of the frog. So the head is broadly jointed behind with the flat ovoid trunk. So you can see here that the head is jointed with the flat ovoid trunk. This complete structure is the trunk. So this eye, external iris, snout, mouth, etc. are the part of the head, and then the remaining body is the trunk. So head is broadly joined behind with the flat ovoid trunk. Neck is absent. No neck is present. Also, tail is absent. So neck and tail is absent. Its back is raised in the middle. So you can see here that the back is raised in the middle. In the middle region, the back is raised, forming a hump. So a sacral prominence of hump, especially conspicuous when the frog is squatting. So when the frog is about to jump, take a leap, you can see a hump-like structure which forms in the trunk region. This is the dorsal hump. At the posterior end of the trunk is a small circular cloacal. So this is the anterior region, which is towards the head, anterior region. This is the posterior region. So this is the posterior region. On the posterior side, you can see an aperture, which is the opening. This aperture is known as the cloacal aperture. This cloacal aperture helps in the discharge of fecal and urinary waste, as well as it helps in the reproductive products like ova or sperm to be discharged outside the body. We know that the fertilization is external. We have already studied that. Therefore, ova and sperm are released outside. No? Ova and sperm are released outside through the aperture, which is the cloacal aperture, through cloacal aperture. So in frogs, we have urogenital system, that is the opening of both the urinary waste and reproductive products is same, and it is through the cloacal aperture, which is present in the posterior region. Now the limbs of the frog. So laterally, if this is the frog, then these two are the lateral sides, right? So laterally, two pairs of limbs or appendages. That is why they are called as tetrapods, because they have two pairs, or we can say four limbs or appendages. So laterally, two pairs of limbs or appendages are present. Towards the anterior side, it's forelimb, and towards the posterior side, it's hind limb. So the short forelimbs arise anteriorly from trunk just behind the head. So it is just behind the head region. And each forelimb consists of the upper arm, which is known as brachium, forearm, which is known as antebrachium, wrist, which is the carpus, and hand, which is the manus, bearing 4 digits without web. So this is important. Why I am saying this is important? Because this is the difference between the forelimb and hind limbs. In the forelimb of the frog, it will be easy to remember if you will remember it by the name. So just to make you remember, I am saying this, although this 4 means on the anterior side, but since there is a difference in the number of digits in the limbs of the frog from the forelimb and between the forelimb and the hind limb, the forelimbs have 4 digits and it is without web. So no web like structure is present. So it is 4 digits. I am again repeating this. I am just mentioning to you so that you can remember it that the forelimbs have 4 digits. But the name forelimb, FORE, is due to the position which is the anterior side or towards the head. So forelimbs have 4 digits while the hind limbs, as we will see, have 5 digits. Thumb or pollex is vestigial. So thumb or pollex is not well developed, it is vestigial. And very important thing that helps in differentiating between the male and female frog is that in male frog, the base of first inner finger is thickened. So you can see here that this base is thickened, forming a nuptial pad. This is formed during the breeding season that helps in mating. So forming the nuptial pad for clasping the female during the amplexus. So during the mating, this is the female frog, and above the female frog lies the male frog. Since the skin is very slippery, therefore the male frog clasps or hold the female frog with the help of this nuptial pad. So this nuptial pad helps in clasping the female during amplexus. This pleasure in frog is known as the amplexus. So this is known as amplexus, where the male frog lies above the female frog during the mating or during the breeding season in order to mate or copulate. The much elongated and powerful hind limbs. So hind limbs are much elongated and they are more powerful. They helps in the they are more powerful as compared to the forelimbs, and they are also known as legs. They rise close together posteriorly from the trunk. Each hind limb consists of the thigh, shank, much lengthened ankle, and large foot having 5 slender clawless toes. So you can see here that in hind limb 5 digits are present. So they have clawless, they do not have any claw, they have clawless toes, and which is connected by broad thin webs of skin which assist in swimming. So this hind limbs, this web like structure which you might have seen in the feet of the duck also. So this is nothing but these are the skin which are present in between the webs of the skin which are present in between the different toes. So there are 5 digits, and as I mentioned that in forelimb, thumb or pollex is vestigial. Similarly, in addition, there is a rudimentary 6th digit, which is the prehelix, which is enclosed within the skin and is not seen as the 6th digit. So this is not very well developed, and therefore it is not considered as a separate digit. And but it is the protruding structure which is known as the prehelix, and it is rudimentary in nature. So one thing that we need to remember is that in forelimbs we have 4 digits. In hind limb we have 5 digits with the nuptial web. Oh, sorry, with web. 4 digits with web. 4 digits with web. While in forelimbs we have 4 digits. In hind limb we have 5 digits for and web, which is the skin structure. And in 4 digits also we know that the first digit The first digit forms the nuptial pad during the breeding. So it forms the nuptial pad during the breeding season. Now, very important thing, whatever we have learned till now will help in differentiating between the male and female frogs. So sexual dimorphism. What is sexual dimorphism? Sexual dimorphism is the ability to distinguish between male and female animals or female organism of same species by looking at external features. So in certain animals, sexual dimorphism is absent, where you cannot differentiate between male and female by looking at external structures. But in frog, sexual dimorphism is present. Sexual dimorphism, di means two, and morphism means morphology. So when we are able to differentiate in between the morphology of the two, that is the males and females, by looking at the external characteristics or the external features, the process is known as this. These differences are known as sexual dimorphism. So there are some differences in external characteristics. We know external characteristics means morphology. So there are some differences in the external characteristics of morphology by which male and female frogs can be distinguished. So males are generally smaller and darker in colors than females. Males are slimmer while females are stouter, especially when they contain eggs. Because especially during the breeding season when they contain eggs, females are more stouter. Males croak loudly because they have vocal sacs, which is absent in females. The eardrum is larger in males. Males have swollen copulatory or nuptial pad on inner fingers. Obviously, because the male have to keep a hold on females, therefore, this copulatory or nuptial pads on inner fingers are developed, especially during the breeding season in males for grasping the female. And nuptial pads are lacking in females because in females they do not have any use. In copulating frogs, in amplexus, the upper one is male and the lower one is female. As I mentioned, based on the position also, we can identify the upper one is the male and the lower one is female. And this copulating frog, this pleasure is known as the amplexus in frogs. So there are certain practice questions for the quick revision of what we have learned till now. So Rana tigrina is a member of the order. We know that Rana tigrina is a member of the order Anura. So the correct answer is option A, Anura. Ranidae is not the order, it's the family. So the answer is Anura. Second is, what type of skin does Rana tigrina have? Does it have a dry and scaly skin? False. It does not have dry skin. It has a moist skin. It has moist and smooth skin. Yes, Rana tigrina do have moist and smooth skin. Skin is not thick and leathery. Skin is not hard and bony. So the answer is moist and smooth. Third is the tongue of frog. So as I mentioned, tongue of frog is long. It is protrusible. Protrusible. So it is long. In order to catch the prey from larger distance, it is protrusible. That is, it can come out. And very important, it is attached at the front end and free at the back end. So the correct answer is long, protrusible and attached at the front end. Question number 4, what is the function of tympanum? We know tympanum is the eardrum or the membrane that receives the sound waves, and therefore it helps in the process of hearing. So what is the function of tympanum in Rana tigrina is it helps in hearing. In frogs, the sexual embrace between male and female is called as, we know it is called as amplexus. It is the sexual embrace between the male and females. The answer is amplexus. The dorsal side of Rana tigrina is generally, so we know that the dorsal side is usually darker with spots. So the dorsal side of the Rana tigrina is darker colored than the ventral side, while the ventral side is, if I talk about the ventral side is lighter and pale yellow in color. while the dorsal side is usually darker with spots, and the color is usually olive green. If I talk about Rana tigrina, it's olive green. So the answer is darker colored than the ventral side. So with this, I'd like to end today's lecture, and in the next lecture, we will again be focusing on Rana tigrina, but we will look at the anatomy and different organ and organ systems that are present in Rana tigrina. So thank you all for attending it.